Hello, and welcome to my presentation about teaching construction planning and scheduling. My name is Ihab Saad. I'm a professor of construction management at Northern Kentucky University. So the brief introduction is that planning and scheduling are two essential skills for the success of a construction project. Although sometimes used interchangeably, these two terms, planning and scheduling, each word means something unique and different. The American Council for Construction Education, ACCE, has established 20 learning outcomes for any program to be accredited or to maintain its accreditation. And among these criteria or learning outcomes, students must display the ability to create an electronic schedule for a construction project. In the United States, there are 72 programs accredited by the American Council for Construction Education at the baccalaureate level, and 13 programs at the associate level. So what we did was send a survey to these programs, and we focused on the baccalaureate level programs because, again, not every associate level program teaches construction planning and scheduling. Of these 72 programs, 42 responded with a rate of 58.33%. Questions on the survey included: what is the number of courses addressing the topic of planning and scheduling? This could be a class dedicated to planning and scheduling or other classes addressing it, among other topics. The timing of the offering of the course within the program, which basically deals with what are the predecessors of or the prerequisites or the co-requisites of this course, whether the program had any work experience requirements for graduation in the form of internship, co-op, or similar other work experience requirements, what are the prerequisites or co-requisites for the planning and scheduling class or classes if more than one, what kind of software is used for instruction, and what is the number of hours dedicated to software training, what are the different topics discussed in that class, what are the components of that planning and scheduling class, and whether the program had any sub-disciplines or tracks, for example, residential, commercial, heavy civil. When we asked about the program sizes, we noticed that the majority of the programs that responded were on the large side, having more than 250 students each. Whereas, as you can see in the graph, the respondents varied between smaller programs with 51 to 100 students. There was no program less than 50 students responding. And the largest one would be, or group would be, more than 250 students. We asked a question about the faculty experience in college teaching, whether they were just recent graduates from their graduate programs, their PhD programs or master's programs, or do they have a long track record teaching at the college level. We noticed that the majority of respondents, for those who are teaching planning and scheduling, had a recent record, which is from 0 to 5 years teaching record at the college level. And whereas the number kept decreasing with a longer number of years of service teaching planning and scheduling. There was a question about the faculty rank. While each one of these different groups serves the purpose of delivering construction planning and scheduling, the approach might be different. So the assumption was that the tenured and the tenure track faculty would focus on the fundamentals of planning and scheduling, the theory behind planning and scheduling, in addition to the practical part, whereas the clinical professors of practice, or the adjunct professors would focus more on the practical aspects of planning and scheduling. We noticed that the majority of the programs mentioned that they have only one class, whereas some programs had more than 1, 2, and 3 classes, which again, as we mentioned before, could include other classes like the capstone class, for example, which has some elements or aspects of planning and schedule as part of the requirements for completing that class. We asked about how do the students start their effort with planning and scheduling. Most of the programs responding were teaching or were dealing with the work breakdown structure. And then precedence diagramming method, which is the current used network technique with predecessors, successors, with different types of relationships, since the arrow diagramming method only provided the finish to start relationship. But with the presence diagramming method, we have different types of relationships, also allowing for lags and overlaps and so on and so forth. So we found that, again, the majority of the programs responding were teaching precedent diagramming method. And then the network calculations, the performance of the network calculations, forward pass, backward pass, early dates, late dates, and floats, etc. How do you allocate resource to the activities? How do you level these resources if needed, etc.? We found that, again, the majority of the programs were teaching that. The financial issues associated with the schedule and the projection of the schedule as a cash flow, again, we found that the majority of the programs were teaching that as well. And then how to combine time control and cost control into the combined system of earned value analysis. Again, 26 out of the 42 programs were teaching that. Project acceleration and time cost trade-off and project time compression, we found that 31 out of the 42 programs were teaching it. And finally, schedule updating and schedule management after developing the schedule, playing with what if scenarios, what if some activities are ahead of schedule or behind schedule, etc. What would be the impact be on the overall project? We found that 33 out of the 42 programs responding were teaching that. We noticed that there was a variety of packages that were used. In the past, probably it was P3 Primavera Project Planner that was the predominant software, but now we have Microsoft Project at least taking a larger portion of that. With Primavera Oracle P6, not as many programs were using it. Some programs are still using Microsoft Excel. Some programs teach more than one package at the same time, by the way. That's why we have the total number of responses exceeding the number of surveyed universities. There was a question about the number of instruction hours dedicated to the software. 10 out of the 42 programs, almost 25%, dedicating more than 15 hours. We find also on the other extreme that 8 of the 42 programs responded that they dedicate less than 5 hours. When the respondents were asked about the course pre or core requisites, we noticed that most of them had estimating and costing as a prerequisite for or core requisite for construction planning and scheduling. And the second largest number was for materials and methods. We found also that construction contracts was one of the common predecessors. Programs, when asked about whether they have a requirement for work experience or not, the majority of them said yes. 11 programs out of the 42 said that they do not have any work experience requirement. The majority of the programs responding in the affirmative to the previous question mentioned that they have more than 600 hours as requirement. There was another question about the timing of this work experience. The majority here said that it's after the planning and scheduling class, whereas many of them also mentioned that it is before the planning and scheduling. So in conclusion, it's essential to teach the future generation of planners and schedulers how to think about these skills, not just the mechanics of planning and scheduling, not just to be computer operators, but how to think about planning and scheduling, how to analyze in a logical and meaningful way the project documents and come up with the work breakdown structure, and then with the list of activities, and then organizing these activities into predecessors and successors into a logical way. Graduates will learn more about project planning and scheduling on the job than what they have learned in the classroom. So again, experience is extremely important as methods change, materials change, production rates change, and the scheduling methods, we expect them also to be changing in the future. Focusing on bottom-up scheduling is essential as it is gradually replacing the all top-down schedule development with minimum input from the actual performance. Principles of collaboration and lean construction provide the flexibility to adapt the schedule to unforeseen events and result in less confrontational and more successful project outcomes. A follow-up research should build on the findings of this survey and adapt the planning and scheduling instruction to the new developments. Thank you for your attention.